Okay, we've got a 5+3 game to get started. Demeji, 1881. What do I want to play against the... maybe I'll get a Grunfeld here. Well, I could still try a Grunfeld setup against this London system. Now, I don't think that's necessarily the best choice, but... well, it's a little different than what I usually play, so maybe it's interesting. Let's go ahead and get castled. So it's not a Grunfeld because I didn't play... I did not play d5. He never played c4. I could play d5 now that he put his bishop there. But I was kind of looking forward to playing e5, opening up the center, opening up this diagonal. Let's see if I can do that anyway. He can, if I just put my rook here. Start with the knight move. I don't want to move my rook away from defense of f7 because he's got his knight coming in here coordinating with the bishop. So now, can I play e5? Probably not. He's got a knight, a bishop, and a pawn on it, and I just had a knight and a pawn defending the pawn, so looked like it was not going to happen. Here's something I could do. Okay, I'll just trade that off. Now I can put my rook on the e file without any trouble. So I say, but actually it's a problem, huh? Okay, let's lift up the queen. I'm going to use the queen to defend. I've got a slow motion plan now. I'm going to use the queen to defend f7. I'm going to put a rook on... Okay, so he's just going to chase my knight away and then take my pawn. Or try to. Let's take first. Then I can put the knight here, and he can't pin it. And aha, he doesn't mind giving up the bishop pair. Well, it's not the bishop pair, is it? It's just a bishop. I can put my knight here again. It's a double attack. It's hitting two pawns. Yeah, I want to go somewhere where I'm not going to keep getting kicked. But it'd also be nice to defend that pawn. So the problem with just straight up is that the knight will come in. The problem with dropping straight back like this is, you know, my queen's on the back rank and I might want to bring a rook over here, but, well, better than nothing. Still, two pawns are hanging. He can take a pawn and stay a pawn up. Let's take this one. Looks like a good pawn to have. And then the b pawn is hanging. It'd be nice to grab that one. He can, of course, defend with his knight or his rook. There's a point to that. So I've got a check here. I guess that's not that great. If I push the pawn forward, he can't take it because I'll take his knight, but he could defend his knight, and then I have to defend the pawn, and then my queen is exposed to a discovered attack. It's not all that bad, though. I don't know. Let's do this. tired of that queen attacking this pawn. I need to hold on to this one. Here I've got some pressure on the remaining pawns. Let's see if he intends to defend this. Oh, no, he's just going to push. That makes sense. He gets him a passed pawn here. And how do I want to approach this? I could try and get my rook behind the pawn. Put your rook behind the passed pawn, right? Maybe he's just now noticing he can't oppose me because of the rook. The power, I mean the bishop, the power of the Grunfeld bishop. I still have this check. Be nice if I could lure him to that square. Let's see. So I put the rook here. I'm not threatening to take the pawn. His rook is defended. Let's just put the rook here. Now I've got the check. I was waiting for that. And, well, now he can take that pawn. I'll take this one. It'll be a trade. That's why I put my rook in front of the this pawn over here. In front of the A pawn. I knew I was going to have a problem there. Okay, so it looks like we're back to about even. Even in material, but I've got the exchange here. So I can fork these two pieces. He can take with the rook or the knight. If he takes with the rook, he can take the pawn with the rook. I take the knight. If he takes the pawn with the knight, I take the rook. There's no check. I don't see a problem here. Maybe he was banking on me rushing to grab this pawn, which is under control, it seems. Well, yeah, let's just take that knight. So I could threaten to mate him now instead of grabbing the pawn. I guess it's simplest just to trade down. And he resigned. Yeah, well, it's always nice to defeat someone who plays the London system. So here, let's get a rapid game. Black again. Emil 007, 1948. So another strong player. Once again, I'll try and get a Grunfeld if I can. There are interesting openings. He allows the Grunfeld. Okay. He plays one of the bishop moves. Yeah, the main lines involve taking the pawn or developing the knight, but there are side lines with bishop to f5, bishop f4, or bishop g5, like he played there. Also okay. And I don't know them very well, so, but it seems logical to defend the knight. By not knowing them very well, I mean not at all. So it looks like he could win a pawn here, but I think in the Grunfeld you're not supposed to worry about that. If he takes my knight, I take back, and then he can just take this pawn. But he doesn't. Should I take his pawn instead? Or should I continue to play aggressively with c5? If he didn't take the d pawn, maybe he'll take the c pawn. c5 is often a move in the Grunfeld because you're trying to enhance the power of this bishop. We just saw in the previous game how that bishop is very handy on that long diagonal. I've probably done something wrong, though. I think he can win material here, and I don't really see that I have enough compensation, honestly. I have decent development, though, don't I? Okay, well, I could start taking stuff now. He turned down both of my kind offers to give him material. And he turns down my kind offer to give him an isolated queen's pawn. Okay, let's get castled. I might want to play a6 next and b5. I have to figure out where to develop these other pieces. You know, I've been thinking about knight to c6 for a while, but I think he would probably just take it each time I play there and try and give me that weakened pawn structure on the queen side. So maybe the knight has to come out here, but then that means the knight is in the way of the bishop. But here's a point where I'll follow up the knight move with knight to I'll follow up the knight move with knight to g6. So the knight won't block in the bishop forever, and the bishop is needed to stay here for a while, defending my b pawn. So I guess he's looking if he can bring another piece to bear, right? He could sacrifice the bishop here. He does. And then try and get a piece to this square or this square. A knight to one of those squares to bring extra pressure on the rook. Oh, he goes there. So what is he hitting? He's hitting my queen. He's hitting this square. I don't believe this works, but let's not be too quick to judge. I think this is the refutation. He might have had the idea of bringing the knight here to, double attack here, but that just doesn't work. And also, I'm offering a queen trade. And where can the queen go? The queen can't even stay on this diagonal because, this knight is covering this square. We could trade. You could start with a trade. So I take it back. He could manage to stay on that diagonal by giving up his bishop. But anyway, I was going to say I could bring the other knight in to take away this square. And so there's no way his queen will be able to stay on this diagonal except if he trades. And anyway, if I chase the queen off the diagonal, then this knight is loose. So queen can't just retreat. I guess it has to go to... well, if the queen were to move, it could go to c4. He could also just take my bishop, for example. That would be a way to get out of this without losing any more material. But he sacrificed a bishop. So he's probably looking for more than just getting out without losing more material. I mean, all he's got for his bishop so far is a pawn. If he trades his knight for my bishop, it leaves me with some pieces that are not well developed. But on the other hand, the rook is unpinned. It's looking at a good spot here. And the knight can move with tempo on the queen, and then the bishop will be free to go. So I think Emil here got himself into a bit of trouble. Well, the one downside of these long games is if your opponent blunders and and then doesn't resign, the game could go on for a long time with nothing happening. I mean, we're on move 11. And yeah, he could just let the clock run out. But yeah, he decided to trade. Why not? So he'll play on a piece down. At least he's moving, so that's what I was worried about. Yeah, what's the knight going to do from there? Is he hoping to get a draw? Ah, he's found a way to either get a draw or get a fork. That's pretty clever. Okay, so let me think about this. The rooks are separated, so I don't want to give up the rook in the corner. The rooks are not defending each other, so I would lose a whole rook if I let him take that one. So I'd rather let him take this one. I could attack his bishop. So I go here to attack the bishop. That also frees up a square for my rook. Oh no, I don't go there to attack the bishop because he just takes it. I could move my knight, my other knight. Yeah, that's something I want to do anyway. Let's activate that knight. Well, he found his way out. So he invested the time. That's what rapid games are good for. He invested the time and found a way to improve his material situation. So he's getting the exchange. So what does that mean? It means he lost a piece and now he's giving up a knight for a rook. So it's 2 pieces for a rook and a pawn. And plus he messed up my pawns over here. So I have the bishop pair. I have 2 pieces for a rook. And he has a pawn. And he's weakened my structure. So maybe that's not so far off from even. Usually the 2 pieces are worth more than a rook. So let's see if we can activate here. Don't have much of a plan here, but I'm thinking maybe dropping my knight in here would be good. Probably lifting up my king would be good so my rook can swing back and forth along the back rank. Moving this knight out, maybe. Yeah, one thing I can do is put this knight here, attacking his bishop. It's defended by my knight and my bishop. If he trades, my other knight will come here, attacking his bishop. And I'm freeing my bishop on the long diagonal. But if I can end up in an endgame where I have the bishop pair against the rook, that's a pretty good endgame for me too. Yeah, so he just gives up a bishop. So he's got a knight, 2 rooks. I have a knight, 1 rook, and 2 bishops. I think I would just trade that knight off, given the chance. If I put my knight on this square, he can push this pawn forward. But my knight's not loose there. So I can drop my bishop back. So if I go with the knight here, he pushes, I drop the bishop back. Where does he go next? He's going to this square to attack my pawn. But I'm attacking his pawn here. Attacking the b pawn, and when he pushes my bishop back, I'm also attacking the a pawn. But only if his knight moves. It'd be nice to reduce his pawns. That's what I would like to use my extra pieces here. To reduce his pawns. So he's giving this one up. But he's guarding the checking square. Yeah, I was going to play bishop here with check, which I thought would be nice. So how about if I take this pawn? Where is he going next? He's going to attack my bishop next. I think that's okay. They say that if you have this situation where you have 2 pieces for a rook and your opponent still has both his rooks and you just have 1, you don't necessarily want to trade off that rook, because in a way the 2 rooks can get in each other's way at times. However, I did win a pawn with that transaction. It's not the greatest pawn because it's still just my 2 pawns are isolated, but it's a pawn. And it looks like I'm getting the b pawn too. How does he defend that? And then I really will have an extra pawn here on the outside. Yeah, getting rid of that pawn too. I think it was worth it, worth the trade. I'm also thinking of ideas like this. Putting the bishop here is kind of a threat. And when that knight moves away, this bishop can come here. And the knight can hop in here. Let's erase those arrows. But I guess the simplest here is just to take the pawn. Can I actually, maybe that's not right. So I take the pawn. Say he comes here and attacks my rook, my knight. And I move my knight, and then he attacks the bishop here. Well, I can use my bishop to attack his knight. I can also move this. Oh, I can't move it with check. How about if I take with the knight instead? He can come directly here and skewer those pieces, but then I can bring this bishop here. I think I'll take with the knight. Seems a little bit safer. And this is directly threatening the fork. And when the knight moves, this bishop can come out with check. So what's going on here? Yeah, I assumed he would just go for the skewer. Boom. I was going to move my bishop to attack his knight. Okay. He encourages me to move my bishop, which I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Oh, I see. He's swinging around to go after these pawns. Makes sense. Makes sense. Or is he not? Is he doing something with the knight? So this bishop is controlling this knight now. Let's go ahead and give the check and chase his king away and then start pushing these pawns. I think that's the key to victory here is get these pawns going. So I push. He could bring his rook up. And I can fork the pieces again. The rook goes here. Bishop here forks rook and knight. Notice this bishop here also controls this square, so his rook can't come over and attack my pawn. And at the end of the game, the bishop pair controls a lot of squares. That's why the bishop pair is considered an advantage. It's particularly pronounced here. So let's see. If I push the pawn, he takes. I push again. He brings his rook up here to attack my bishop, but it's defended by the knight. But I do have to move the knight to get it out of the way. Let's start with moving the knight. This also brings back the idea of the knight here with check, although I don't know how strong that is anymore. Well, if the king runs this way, there's a check here. If the king runs up, there's a check here with the skewer of the king and the knight. It is, and if the king runs this way, then there's a discovered attack. Okay, so should I give the check? See which way the king goes? If he goes... well, that check will only win will only cause a trade. Let's push the pawn. I think that's stronger, and leave the check there is something I might play. The bishops cover these squares, and then when it gets here, the light squared bishop can come over to the A file, or maybe here to hit the queening square. So he is offering that trade. Yeah, I'm not ready to trade just yet. Let's keep pushing. think it's helpful to have all three pieces to promote that pawn. Is this really good for him? Okay, well, I want to go to a square where he can't check me again. So he puts the rook behind the pawn. So yeah, I just keep pushing. Another idea would be to do this maneuver with my knight. And I would block his view of the pawn, and then I queen, and he can't stop me. So he's looking for a check here. He can play the check there. I can take it. Let's threaten to queen that pawn. I think just winning his rook will be good enough. But it's possible that other idea of this knight maneuver was stronger. That's a definite possibility. But I'll have three pieces against one. Should be able to round up enough pawns to turn that into a win. So the check, my bishop is guarding the check. So knight check doesn't do anything. He can do a king check. And I'll just move my king up, and then there's no more checks after that. I mean, he can do a rook check of my king. I just go up one square, and now he can't check me again. The knight has no checks, and the rook, well, only has sacrifices, doesn't have any checks. Well, there he did. He played that. It's only delaying the inevitable. This is a check. So I don't have to worry about any discovered checks here. And we have this situation. So yeah, I've got two bishops extra. He decided to resign. He didn't want to play out that endgame. Anyway, nice games. I will upload this and see you guys later. Bye.